Harvey's also not in town. Maybe Bible would have looked. I mean, he probably doesn't know where it is. Maybe.
Okay, so we're up to Reish Aleph, Ayin Beis, Reish Aleph, page Tov Zayin, 407. Right?
Yeah.
And let's see here. Start from the Kitzur.
Yeah.
So the Kitzur of last. So we're middle of the discussion here that a Chachmeh, the Mamutza, that he's looking for the Mamutza between Meitzl and Etzolin, that's Keser. But in Keser itself, it's Chachmeh Stima. So Chachmeh has two extremes. Chachmeh has two extremes. We're rolling here already. Hope you don't mind.
Oh, I gotta go there to Miyasi. He was here coming late.
Okay. So there's the two parts. She spoke about Kabbalah and Eitz Chaim, in Ezer and Eitz Chaim, that there's the two aspects in Keser. There's the Meichen of Atik Kadisha, which is connected to Meichus Temor. That's the Primius. The Meichus Temor gets the Primius of Atik, and or no Sreish Aleph. I'm just reviewing this. And the Golgalta, the skull, even though it protects the Meich, it's like a higher level, but it's rooted in Chesenis. The Makif, it's a level of Makif, and so on.
Were you on Reish Aleph later?
Reish Aleph. No, it was just beginning of Reish Aleph. So it's a level of Makif and a level of Chesenis, of Atik. And he began by giving a mashal of two types of, this is where we were analyzing it yesterday, two types of einig, pleasure. There's a pleasure a person has when they want something. So for example, a father wants his son or his child. So when he gets it, the mili haratzon, the fulfillment of the ratzon, he gets pleasure. But the pleasure doesn't add anything to the ratzon. In other words, it's a reward for it, but it doesn't add anything to it. It's more outside of it. Whereas a person has pleasure, like he brings from Rab Abba, for fun tesefta chadata, chachmeh, when you learn something, so the pleasure actually gives chayis into your learning. And it's different learning something that you see as old, a sefer vezdach, than finding something new that has a novelty and has a chiddush in it. That's basically what he's speaking about. The two types of
You just
einik.
did one type.
One is einik from ratzon, one is einik from chachmeh. Einik from chachmeh is
But
more
either way,
primitive.
you're saying an einig that's coming as a result of something below it. If tainig is the highest.
He's not talking about timing being the highest. He's not talking about timing being the highest. He's talking about which takes deeper previous dikatainuk. So he explains the chachma is deeper. Because the other one is just like a reward. Yet you want something that has nothing to do with time and seichel. The tainuk is more of a chetzenis dika reward like. Mashenkin.
Yeah, in the Kutitated, the Malchus 2-3 weeks ago, they had talked about the idea of einig and chachma. The fact that Savu Panov is a raya that the market of chachma is an einig. The fact that
That's exactly what he says here. Same thing here.
So
he brings Sav upon him, yeah. But here he wants to say it's previous at Tainuk. In other words, he wants to basically bring out the chachmas temor, learning, using your head and learning, is ultimately a mutza to atik. Whereas the Tainuk that comes from something that's like a rotzen has nothing to do with seichel. Let's say doing mitzvahs. Doesn't have to have a seichel. You do a mitzvah, you mekayim the rotzen Hashem. So even though there's a Tainuk in it, but the Tainuk is not as deep in previous dik as the Tainug and Chachma, basically, is what he says. So I'm reading the Kitzur. L'kumayken b'chachmas timo yesh beis madregas, ima yesh isasun b'chlal. Even though Chachmas Timo in general is concealed, is closed, but has two madregas like Chachma Gluya. Dihine b'idre zuta the closed tikuni da'atiku b'meiches timo. The closed, the levushim of Atik are in meiches timo. V'hayin the Atiku b'meiches timo b'chinas slapshus pnimi. Atik, which as we'll see is pleasure, is in meiches timo in a slapshus pnimi. It manifests itself in a pnimistic way. V'ub'chinas pnimius Atik. It's a level of pnimius Atik. Golgalta, which is the skull, even though it's in a sense higher than the brain, than the mind, because it surrounds it and protects it, like he says, it's just a bone. It doesn't have any mechan, it doesn't have a pnimistic connection to Atik, only in the form of chitzenis and makif. Keser, like the crown, like physically, like he said, a crown is nivdal, separate from and higher than the skull. Keser, a crown sits on top of the head. Separate. And that, the premise of it is connected to Chachmas Timo and the Chitzin is to Galgal. Now it brings more up Chassidus. Tainug pleasure is either b'mili harotzen or b'seichel. Ach b'rotzen b'chinas makif. The pleasure connected to the fulfillment of a rotzen is in a form of makif. L'chein ein meisa b'chayis. That's why it doesn't add chayis in it. In other words, let's say the rotzen of an av to connect his ben is not added by having pleasure in it. He has it whether he has pleasure or not. By chachma, however, when you learn something and you learn it with pleasure, you learn it with a whole different chayis.
Says over there.
Batam, once again, because the reason for this is because rotzen is makif. So filling up the rotzen, you're only going to get a makif dika result. While chachma is behem. That's also the Torah Tainug is with the erech what it is. Chachma is pnimis, so the Tainug is not pnimis. Rotzen is makif, so the Tainug is not makif. V'chol makif hu chitzenis, v'pnimi gam ha'ora hi pnimius. So every makif, as it gives a rule, is chitzenis and pnimi. Even if it's only a ha'ora, reflection, not the etzem, it's still more b'pnimius because it's connected to a pnimius dika thing. What do you want to say?
He says over there in the Kuti Torah, the fact that the person, when he has it, his hefte chadita, for example, or he chapsachan himself in the seichel means, the tainug is beikir at that time. Later, after he learns it and understands it, that tainug that he has when he chaps it is not as great as when he chaps it.
That's what he just says, nisyashin. When the seichel is nisyashin, lo yesh. Look at the four lines from the bottom of last page. In other words, it's only a chiddush.
Chachma comes from, in other words, Chachma comes from Einik. Haraya, that's why at the time that the Seichel comes in, you feel the Einik. Because it still just came, so it's still connected to where it's coming from. Which is showing that it's not, in other words, in a sense, to me, it's showing the Benegeya here.
It's very similar.
Tainug is a fulfillment of Ratzin. As a result of Ratzin being fulfilled. Chachma, it's coming from the Tainug.
That's very masim to what it says here. Basically, primis abba, primis atik. Remember, the key reason this is important here, because you need a mamutza. Who's looking for the mamutza for us to get to Elikus. And the mamutza is ultimately going to be chachmas tima. That means when we learn, let's say, Teira, we try to understand the Eibishter, etc., it's your way in. It's your way into the deepest part. And varaya, because you're getting the tiny, you're not just getting a chitzenis thing. Because if chachma was not getting the pnimius, you'd be back to square one, where we don't really go into Atik. Remember, the whole problem is to get to Atik. The problem is to get to Atik. Okay, so now, Eisrei Shalaf, you came right perfect
But
time.
Atik, we said Atik and Arach itself cannot be a Mutz. That was the conclusion.
That's why you need Chachmas Timah, because Chachmas Timah can go into Atik and to Arich. It's like the traveler. Yeah, essentially. And that's what creates that Kesser becomes a Mutza. Yeah. Omnam Yashlema Bezeh Eisrei Shalaf. Omnam Yashlema Bezeh. However, what we can say in this matter, then you do that Rotzen Ukeich Atzmi Mamish, Kumei Tainuk. Kumei Einik, rather. Rotzen is a Keich Atzmi Kumei Einik. Let's just explain. what that means. In the keiches hanefesh, in the human structure, psyche, is keiches premium, keiches makifim. It's just everybody. Keiches premium is the keiches, like Chassidus says, that are connected. They're defined in two ways. Things that are connected to a particular part of your body, like eyes. The eyes are structured in a way that allows you to see. You can't see with your ears. Ears are structured in a way that bring the keich hashmiyah. So the nefesh has everything that it needs. It's like energy. Like those old days, used to put the coins into those things, and every coin went into its place. The nefesh is energy, but there's a keich hariyah in the nefesh. So a person could have a complete shleimus de keich hariyah. The nefesh, God forbid, if the nerve between the brain and the eye isn't working well, or physically there's damage to the eye, the nefesh remains b'shleimus, like it says is the mashal. It's meredika mashal, that two people who can't see, two blind people will give birth to a seeing child, because there's nothing wrong with them in their nefesh. They physically, unless the child inherits, God forbid, a genetic defect. But there's nothing wrong. Everybody has in the nefesh is complete, all the keiches. That's keiches pnimim. Every part of the body has another way to distinguish a keiches pnimi is that it has a specific role to play. There's two keiches called keiches makifim, or he's calling keiches atzmim. What atzmim means? They're much closer to the nefesh because they're not a specific thing. They include everything. For example, the will for something. You could have a beautiful, great eyesight. You could have a great mind. But if you don't have a will to learn, you're not going to learn. The story with the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says, time to start using it. She says, ich kann doch lernen, ob ich will. Der Alter Rebbe sagt, Punkt wie Ganef ist nicht einer, was kein Ganef, nur der, was Ganef. Is a lamden, nicht der, was kein lernen, but der, was lernt. So the fact that you could do something doesn't mean that's missing the main thing. Your nefesh, of course, the potential everybody has. So, Rotzen, you have to have a will. You could have everything. If a person is lazy and sleeps, he's not going to get it done. Which is, interesting. When you analyze a person, you have to sometimes analyze, is he capable and doesn't want? Or he wants and he's not capable. Unfortunately, you often have one or the other. Die was kennen will nicht. Die was willen kennen.
Competence or
Right.
conscious income or
Right.
unconscious income.
Like die was kennen will nicht und die was willen kennen nicht. You got a problem then, right? It's like whenever I teach a Kabbalah thing for the world, I always start with Hagdama, disclaimer. I said, they say the Kabbalah say that those that know don't say, and those that say don't know. So if I say anything, it's not going to be a good sign. Kabbalah, I always want to make sure that they, So bottom line is, Keiches Atzmim are like Rotzen is one, and Tainug is another. So you can have pleasure from seeing something nice, you can have pleasure from tasting something, you can have pleasure from thinking about something. So these two keiches, you can't say they rest in one part of the body. They're not eyes, ears. You could hear beautiful music and have pleasure. So pleasure is a keich for sure, but it's a keich atzmi. It doesn't have a particular keli anywhere. You can't say where's tainuk in the body. Right. It depends what's keich. But as you can say, where's keich hariyah, seeing is an eyesight. Seeing. So that's keiches atzmi. I'm just giving explanation. So
how would you type atzmi in English?
Essential is the general definition, the technical. I would type atzmim. The difference in atzmim and, let's say, atzmim, I would type connected closer to the source. It's like, it's almost like the difference between a chief of staff and a particular minister of education, let's say. So his job is to represent education. The chief of staff is like the guy that represents what the king wants, what the leader wants, in all areas. So Rotzen and Taining more or less like represent the nefesh in all areas. And then there's how the nefesh expresses itself in different specific
And
things.
pride.
Pride? Gaiva. Depends what pride is.
Pride.
Pride is the pride.
I see.
No, that's one of the
I see people have tremendous rotzen because of a certain pride, and therefore the pride is used out in kedusha.
Did you see the book I did on Sfira Seimer, the Midas?
Yeah, I didn't read it.
Yeah, but the pride can be positive and negative.
Right.
Yigba libe b'darkei Hashem, that you're proud to be a Jew. You're proud, and therefore, there's also pride. The opposite is gaiva. vanity.
Correct.
Pride generally associates with midas hanetzach, not so much with a big kol as they could think. You could have pleasure from being, let's say, from having pride about something, but like midas hanetzach, amalek. It's different levels. I don't want to know which Shvira, but it's definitely not Ratzon and Tainug. Remember, Ratzon and Tainug is not the cause of the pleasure. It's the etzem inyan to have pleasure. You could have pleasure from a million things. Ratzon and Tainug is just two elements. Think of a person that doesn't have a will, doesn't have pleasure. What would they have? They'd just be like
depressed.
But even an animal has pleasure from things, so they become depressed. They wouldn't. Would not be a human being we could relate to. Everybody has to have will and pleasure. Question from Kedusha, not Kedusha. Anyway, let's go on here. And you do that, Rotznu Keich Atzmi Mamish Kamei Einig. Because he's not talking about Rotznu and Einig, remember. The Hari Amitas HaRotznu, the Mashareitza Adovu Hu Rak Mitzad Etzem. Real Rotzn is for no reason. Basically is what he's going to say. The Hari Amitas HaRotznu, the Mashareitza Adovu Hu Rak Mitzad Etzem. Like I said yesterday, or I think he may say here, when somebody wants something, I'm not talking about kshanas the klipa. We're talking about inyan, the inyan of Ratzon. Ratzon is a will that's not is atzmi because it's not connected to a particular reason. Remember I said atzmi means that it's general, it doesn't have a particular reason. So let's say the Ratzon of the natural Ratzon of a av to a ben, a father to a son, or other things that a person wants. Could be also not negative, not positive, negative things. A person's action. You say, what do you want it? You can give all kinds of excuses, but bottom line is, it doesn't make a difference because if there was a reason, just show him that that reason is no longer there. He'll stop wanting it. You see, people have akshanas. So Ratzon is a keich atzmi in the sense, there's something inside of that person. I'm not getting now healthy, not healthy, that makes him want something. It's not that he wants it because he's going to get pleasure from it. There are things we want, you get pleasure. So you know what, if a person like that, you could say, you know what, I'll give you the same thing, but you get the same pleasure, a different way. Okay, fine. But this is not a rotzen that's connected to you doing it. The sibba of the rotzen is not pleasure. Ki'im harotznu mitzad atzme. Azei viler. U'lechein yesh rotzen b'lei tainuk. That's why there's a rotzen without pleasure. Doesn't mean every rotzen is like that, but there is such a thing as wanting something without pleasure. Ukmoi, like rotzen av beben, rotzen ben ba'av. A father wants his son, and the son wants his father. The wanting is not because they get pleasure from it. They want it no matter whether they get pleasure or not. The rotzen is a rotzen atzmi. There's something in the nefesh of a father that connects to his son, and something in the nefesh of a son connects to his father. That means atzmi. Atzmi generally is. I'll give you an example. For example, let's speak about colors. They speak white is a tseva atzmi. It's a gevin atzmi. Why? Because it's the natural color of everything. Everything else has to be dyed. The natural color of like even in the spectrum of light, white is the natural. And when you bend light, that's when we see colors. That's why a rainbow. So white is like the natural color. There's an example for many different things. Like that's why Yom Kippur is white. So it's a gevin atzmi. Anything else, added color has giluyim. It's very nice, but it's not the pure. You want to see somebody in their pure. I don't want you to see you dressed up, how you are in your etzem. So that's why it's called a rotzen atzmi. It also means it's not hybrid. It's not like mixed with something. What is water, pure water like? Without any sugar, without additives, so to speak. So there's things, that's called atzmi in simple English. It means that you have the etzem of it without any additions or colorings or ingredients, like what's his name said. Look at my couch. This is authentic imitation leather. You understand? Because the reason for that is because it's rotzen atzmi me'etzem ha'nefesh. Kum von etzem ha'nefesh. The reason he wants it because it's an extension of his etzem. Not like, in other words, think of it this way. There are things we want for the thing because it has some value. There are things that come from within you, wherever you'd be, no matter what. A father would never lose his love for his son. Will never lose the will to be connected to his son. Makes no difference. Nothing will change that because it's an atzmizdik thing coming from etzem ha'nefesh. in the mashal that he's giving here. Okay. Just like Lamata, in other words, there's such a thing also Lamaila. There's Ratzna Atzmi da Kodesh Baruch Hu b'Neshamis Yisrael. Same thing as the Ratzna of the Eibush in Neshamis Yisrael. It's not mitzvah Maila of theirs. It's not because they're giving him something. It's not because there's a Ratzna Atzmi. U'Kamoshe Kosev Ahafti Eschem Amen Havaya. The Eibush sagt Ich hab lieb. The Eibush sagt I love you. B'chinas Ava Atzmis b'Neshamis Yisrael. It's an atmistic love. It's essential love. It's not a love that's dependent on something. It's not a love that's at times yes and times no. It's unconditional at all times, coming from that. In other words, as long as the Eibishter exists, he's going to have love for them because it's part of his personality, so to speak. He's kasher. Atzme kavyochel b'neshamis Yisrael. The Eibishter sich verbunden. He connected himself kavyochel b'neshamis Yisrael. Bli shum tam b'siba. Connected himself to Neshamas Yisrael without any reason. Just the difference in Tam and Siba. Speak sometimes, Tam is like a reason, Siba is a cause. There's a little distinction. But basically, there's no reason, no cause. Why does he say Kavyachal? Because obviously the Eibusher is not forced to do anything. So he's bavarning. It's not forced, he wants to do it. So it's part of him. So by us, you can say a father has no choice. Biological. My son is my son, and that's it. You can't change that. Eibishter, you can't say he's muchrich. He's not. He does have the will, but as I the Eibishter, whatever, it's chazei verbunden. He connected to us be'etzem, not for any pleasure ukahai gavna, for any other reason. Rachman says etzem arotzen. That's his etzem arotzen. Kumashikosav tikitiu atem eretz chayfetz. Bring the rayas to all this. He's talking about Neshamas Yisrael. You'll be Eretz Chayfetz, a treasureful, desirable land. But Uksiv Chefetzi Bo. I want Chayfetz is in this case sometimes Chayfetz is Tainug, but here he's meaning Chayfetz. I Chefetzi Bo. My Chayfetz, my will is in you, is in her. Shamas. Ukamoy Rak Eschem Yedaiti. Another lashon, another pasuk. Eschem Yedaiti. You I know. What's the Yadaiti? Pirish Ratzisi. In other words, nicht Eschem Yadaiti, I know you, that's Eschem Ratzisi. It's you who I want. He brought here 3-4 rayas, all to prove that, he has to prove it. How do you know the Eibusher Be'etzem wants? So there's psukim. Because without that psukim, we can't just say what the Eibusher wants. He says it's in the Torah. The Alter Rebbe brings a Hafti Eschem Amar Hashem. If everyone remember that pasuk, would be in good shape. I'm hat nicht lieb. Ayin hat nicht lieb dem Eibishter. Because darf lieb haben, darf lieb haben, das was David du hast lieb, hat lieb. Basically, if you don't love a Jew, you don't love God, because God loves Jews. I have to ask Amar Hashem. If you don't love what God loves, how could you not mean you're not loving Him? Yeah. V'zeu inyan zichrenis de Rosh Hashanah, and this love is the inyan why we say zichrenis. Malchus zichrenis shefris. Well, that whole section where we talk about remembering the Rosh Hashanah. Why do we say Zechrenis? Like, the Zacharis, Avram, Zacharis, Yitzchak, all the Lashenas there. That's the Gemara. We say Malchi is because the Eibishter Tamachuni Alechem, and so on. You say Zechrenis in order that we remind the Eibishter, think about us, remember us, L'Teva, Faguts. Just like if your father, you think, forgot you, you wake her up and say, listen, you give him a whole bunch of memories. You said once this, you said this, you said this. So she said, yeah, now I remember. She says, you should remember us, Lateva.
I remember you, my son.
Huh? What?
You remind your father.
To be waking.
No, it's there. It's only remember. It's only awakening. It's like,
awakening the love.
Father's busy at work.
Okay.
And then, and you keep calling him. He says, not now, not now. That one. And the one with the child finally can't get a hold of his father. His father says, what do you want from me? She says, I'll come home tonight. You'll tell me what you want. She says, I want to know how much are you worth an hour? Like how much is, So his father says, Meshuggah. Finally calculates it. It's worth whatever. Makes $3,000 an hour, whatever it is. So his son brought him an envelope with like $49.20. He says, how much time can I have? You never heard that one? His father says, I'm worth $3,000 an hour. Fine. So the next day, his son brings an envelope with $49.25. He says, "How much time can I have?" Sometimes you have to wake up. It means all this is nice, but we can't get a bit distracted.
So they should get distracted and we need to remind them.
He says, "I'll give you a video machine. I'll give you a toy. I just want you to be with me. I don't need anything. It's free." And then the father, I always talk with. And then the father, of course, says, "So what? So you ask your father, you don't love your son?" Yeah. He says, "I'm busy for him. I'm building security for him." And meanwhile, destroying his son's neshama, he says, "I'm waiting for my father to come home. He's building security for me somewhere." You're not taking your money with you. But these are the things we forget. No, that's why he needs a cherenis. God can also forget sometimes. He gets busy. There's a lot of things to do. It's a grace of wealth. For who liyas, and this is a claim that who liyas the Rosh Hashanah who aliyah b'chinas reimus ha'atzmus the ein safe. Why you do Rosh Hashanah? Because Rosh Hashanah is the aliyah. You go into the reimus and the hebenkeit and the exaltation, and atzmus ein safe. Kamesha Amar hamelach hakodesh b'chinas kodesh umuvdil. You don't say ha-kel ha-kodesh. Hamelach hakodesh b'chinas kodesh umuvdil mitzad atzmei. Say Melech, what's the addition of Melech HaKodesh, the holy king? Say HaMelech, the Eibush is HaMelech. That's Nishtam HaMelech, is he going all the way into Yeres Kodesh, Kedushas, Rashi says in Kedeshim, have Lashon Havdalah, it means it's separate. The Eibush is completely separate. You're going into his inner sanctum to remind him about you. The Oz, Klolos, Ishtal, Shusena, Tefes, Makom, Klal, Klal. In that moment, in that place.
You're going into the inner sanctum. The Eibush is retreating into his atzmus.
Okay,
therefore we need the Yala Zichanechem to...
Okay, he's going to finish. He's going to finish, yeah. And there, in that place, and that time, when the Eibush is in that place, Melech HaKodesh, the ganze Shtalshlus, the whole world, and all the Inyonim, and everything in this universe is not Tefes Mokim dort. He's a ganze Nivdal, he's separate. Val Kain, Tzrichim, is a Koden, Zichron Aleim, Kamei Dover HaNishkach. That's why, I think it's Fakir, that's why we need to remind him, like you remind something that's forgotten. The Be'emes, Hare Ein Shichel Lifnei Kesik V'decha. In truth is, you can't say the Eibush forgets. It says in Chazal, it says, Ein Shikre, Tachas Kis V'decha. There's no amnesia, there's no memory loss, unto the Kis HaKovid. Rak Machmas Hed the Tfisas Mokim. So it's not the Eibush forgets, it's because in his own Etzem, in the Etzem of Ein Seif, ganze Sache is nicht negay. It's nicht Tefes Mokim. So it's not that he forgets, but because it's not Tefes Mokim nothing, you need to be me'ered that we're here and remember us. That's what we say in the Zechrenes. We say, you remember Maise Elam, you remember was tut sich in the Welt. Why do you have to say that? Shezel Elam HaNetzel, the Elam HaNivra. He's talking about the Elam HaTzilus and Elam HaBriya. Upekid Kol Yitzuri Kedem. He's going through the Lashenis. And you count every individual, every member.
Upekid, you remember.
Every what?
Upekid, you remember.
What did I say? Upekid. I said you count, I said. Oh, because I'm just writing something about Pekudim. You're right. Upekid, you remember Kol Yitzuri Kedem. You remember all the things you created, every detail, every she's saying Netzel and Bria is Maisa Elam, Yitzuri is Elam HaYitzira. Yeah, creatures of old, meaning Mekedem Shemekedem LaMaisa Bereshis, from beginning and before Maisa Bereshis. Vehin Elam is Ein Seif Shalamayla Matzilus.
Wow, so it's going up.
Yeah, it's going up. Because Kedem, it's Mekedem LaMaisa, meaning Lifnei Atzimtzum. So you remember that. Shal Kulam Tzrichim Hazakon B'Rosh Hashanah. Everything needs to be reminded of Rosh Hashanah because the Eibush is in his Etzem. Kein Sachen ist Tefes Mokim. Nicht Atzilus, nicht Bria, nicht Lifnei Atzimtzum. Nothing is Tefes Mokim. So you have to remind him. Val Kol Zeh Hu Nisker Kav Yochel Idei Hazakon D'Neshamis Yisrael. And all this about Maisa Elam, he remembers through remembering Kav Yochel. He remembers Kav Yochel through the remembering Neshamis Yisrael. In other words, because Neshamis Yisrael is Negei Netzah. The Welt is nicht as Negei.
It doesn't, the Zeicher of Maisa Elam is not because suddenly we're mo'ered how the Welt is important. By the Eibush it wasn't Tefes Mokim, so now we're mo'ered, it should be Tefes Mokim. No, it remains not Tefes Mokim. It's nevertheless in Zikaron only because of Neshamis Yisrael. So even though it's not Tefes Mokim, I still remember the Welt because of Neshamis Yisrael.
Yeah. וכמו שאומר גם הסנח באהבה זכרת. Another one of the Zechreins we say also Neach you reminded
Why
Ba'ava.
does he bring that here?
One second, the Rebbe brings the Rebbe in many sikhs brings this us in Ayin Beis even before we had this. Why? Well, let's read on. He's bringing everything basically.
Bris with Noach, Bris with Avram, Bris with Moshe.
Yeah. And then you end the Zechrenis to remember the bris, the covenant with the Krisis bris with Avram and Moshe. And through this, you remember Kol Ma'aseh Bereishis. You could say Noach is Kol Ma'aseh Bereishis because he's remembering Noach and his children and the whole animals after the Mabul. And then there's Avram and Moshe. In other words, through remembering Avram is the Krisis bris with Eden, the Eibush remembers also the Welt. Because the reason Pashtus you may say it is because the Eibush created the world for Eden. You know what's. Remember, this is a Shabbos Shuvah Maimon. Let's not forget as well. What did I say?
Bottom line.
Yeah. We say this is the beginning of your Masecha, of your creations. Zikaron Yom Rishon reminds us the first day. The Pirush Yom Rishon who reishis kol ishtalshus.
It's not just the Koran Yom Rishon of Ma'aseh Bereishis.
Not just right the first day. It means Rishon relation. You're reminding kol the Rishon of kol, the whole beginning of Seder Ishtalshus. Because remember, we need to have the whole world recreated. She'olah, but it's saying Apashal l'haitzil livrei. It means when it arose in the Ratzon Apashal in Etzem.
Reminding the Eibishter of what originally possessed him to make a world.
Right. Shazikon al zehu b'Rosh Hashanah shu yem tchilas masecha and yem bris Adam Arishon. There you go. And when do you remember this? Yem bris Adam Arishon. Not he's going to say not Chaf Hey Elul when the world was created, when the Neshamas were created, when an Adam Arishon was created. That's when you remember. The Hari b'Chavei be'el nivra elam. Hari, we know that the world was created 6 days earlier before Rosh Hashanah on Chaf Hey Elul, 25th of Elul. Rosh Hashanah Yom Shishi leMa'aseh Bereishis. Rosh Hashanah is 6 days in Ma'aseh Bereishis. Sheboy Nivra Adam Arishon. So Zeh Tchilas Masecha and Ikir HaKavona HaPnimis. Why is that? Because Adam Arishon is the Ikir Kavona Pnimis. And Chafei El was created so-called the platform, the environment. But the Ikir Kavona Pnimis of creation, when is real Tchilas Masecha, is when Adam Arishon was created. B'Mela, Yodei was a cardinal called Ma'aseh Bereishis. That's why it's a cardinal Yom Rishon. Zeh Yom Tchilas Masecha. Today is the beginning of Masecha, not Chafei El. Because today the Ikar Kavana of the Neshamas Yisrael, Adam Rishon, and through that the cardinal Yom Rishon is a cardinal that reminds us of everything that happened, why the Eibishter put into play Bereishis Bara Elokim and even Kedem, even before that, Lifnei Atzim. So that's the Pirush. Today, Rosh Hashanah, and therefore Zikaron Yom Rishon reminds us of everything from the beginning. Okay. Now he goes deeper. There's two types of Zikaron. There's an external Zikaron and there's a Pnimis Zikaron. Shazayim Zikaron Zichlin or Zichlin Habris the Neshamas Yisrael. Zikaron Pnimis Zichlin Habris. I think now he's going to explain this whole thing here. Basically, the Noach, I see he explains the whole thing. There's like, I think what he's going to probably say here is like something like this, that when you remember something important that happened to you, there's the etzem thing, that's the most important thing that happened, but you also remember the Arum, where you are, what year it was, etc. Even though it's Negei and Nor Dazach. Let's say you have a memory about the Rebbe or something. So etzem is the memory of the Rebbe, but also what Fabrengen was, what year it was, where I stood, that type of thing. So one is more of the Zikaron Pnimi, which is the etzem, the real, the Ikir. The Zikaron Chitzeni is more the Arum, which is also part of the memory and part of the details. So he's going to explain. That Zikaron HaBris, when Neshamas Yisrael, when you say in Zechreinus, they remember the Bris, the Eibishter made Neshamas Yisrael, that's Zikaron Pnimi. You're saying they remember, the Eibishter remembers the Welt, that's Zikaron Chitzeni. Because the Welt is the Chnar HaPrat, a Toffel to the Ik. The Inyan Hu Din Yedu B'Inyan Krisis Brush, Hu Ma Shem Mechalkim Dover Echad L'Shnei Chatzoyin Ve'Evrim B'Neim. The Krisis Bris Kipshute, what means Krisis Bris is, the covenant of the parts. The Eibishter told Avram Avinu, Bris Bein Apsadim, should take the animal, cut it into 2 parts, and walk through it. That was the way he made a agreement in the olden days.
Not an agreement, much a covenant.
Yeah, a covenant, but a serious covenant was made, a Krisis Bris. That's why it's called Krisis Bris. A bris. Bris, you cut it, a bris means to cut. I mean, Krisis Bris, you cut, and through that, what's the type of bris then in this case? The covenant is the bris. Bris bein hapsadim. The bris, the covenant that made Vishen Tzvei Chalokim. Okay. Why you do that? Because it's a symbol. So mechalkim dover echad, you take one thing and break it into 2. The Evrim b'neim, when you walk through it, zeu siman shechein dover echad. So it's saying that you, the Eibishter, is here. Avram is here, just like these 2 pieces really are one. And we're walking through it, even though we are 2, we have made now an agreement that we have become one.
In other words, he's answering your question. If it's a bris that we are together, why are you cutting in half?
Okay, Mele answers the question. But the point is to emphasize that there are 2 things here, and they're making an agreement and showing that they're really one, and will always remain one. So the Eibishter made that Krisis Bris with Avram forever. You remain one, no matter, even when it looks like it's 2 pieces. V'oid meira ha-Krisis Bris, another thing that a Krisis Bris shows, demonstrates, shegam im yisrachu mizeh mizeh, afilu bevet weit eine von zweiten, even if you get distant and separate, yeh mekom mokom chiburim v'sachdusim b'pnimis nafsham. Right? But it shows that still your chibur, your connection, your agdus, is still there b'pnimis nafsham. And that will also allow and help that you become connected also b'chitzenis. So basically 2 reasons. The first thing Krisis Bris shows that 2 parts are really one. And the second thing is that even if you go apart from each other, it demonstrates that the Pnimius we're really all one. Huh?
You joined the oil today?
Yeah, a little later.
Later?
Yeah, well,
20 minutes?
probably. Yeah.
You davening over there?
I don't know yet. I'll see. Why you want to go with me?
Yeah. It's fine. All right.
Okay, so you want to wait here? Or you want to come back? Whatever you
I
like.
know when you're going to leave.
I don't know exactly. I'm going to finish here. To be there by 9, right?
Yes.
Now it's 8:07. Probably 8:30. Okay? You come back here then?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. My father's yard site today.
Time.
Yeah, we can say no.
So when you have a partnership, for example, the Isachtas is Punkt Paket. Inside, they can be far apart, but the Poil on the outside,
For convenience,
or for convenience, or for whatever it is, right? They're behaving as
die
partners.
Samen gerade hat gesagt, man nimmt nicht das Schutte, weil man gleicht haben, man nimmt ihn, weil man kann es nicht annehmen.
Here is the other way around. On the outside, there might be issues.
Did I say Edel?
Yeah. Of course, that's the whole point, yeah. Here verkehrt.
The
Even when
outside
you
there may
see,
be issues. On the inside, it's
what they say, when you make agreements, man darf an wie ein Goy, und dann wie ein Yid, und das nicht ist verkehrt, ah? Das ist echt sein Wort. Und im letzten sein Wort ist doch echt, ich nicht gehört dem ersten Mal, ich nicht dem dritten Mal.
That's a real classic.
Und auf Eitzes habe ich Schmuleis.
You learned
This
that
is
in
Samen
the
gerade
morning.
Okay, v'adugma mizeh l'mayla, and the dugma mizeh, the moshel of this, of the Krisis Bris l'mayla, is the Isagdus HaChitzeni, who b'chol Seder Shtalshlus. The Isagdus Chitzeni is the Kol Seder Shtalshlus, meaning the whole platform of the cosmic order. Okay? Shein rak Chitzeni Sarotzen. Because the Welt is doch not Chitzeni Sarotzen. The Kavon is doch nicht in the Welt. The Kavon is in the Shamas Yisrael. So the Kavanah is Shamas Yisrael, but you need to have a platform where they're going to do what they have to do, where they're going to accomplish something, to make a dira b'tachtenim. So the Welt is only Chitzeni Sarotzen. But derech klal zeh ha-Krisis Bris the Noach. And the derech klal, this is the Rebbe brings in Sichas, Yitzchak this thing. This is b'klal the Krisis Bris the Noach. Because after the Mabul, the Eibishter made with the Keshes, he made a Krisis Bris that will never destroy the world again. Shual kiyum ha'elam ha'tachten. The Krisis Bris was that the Welt Poshet, he's not going to destroy the world again, like he did by the Mabul. So it's about it was an agreement, a covenant, a bris, Chris's bris, al kima elam hatachten, befrat. The kim close histalshlus b'chlal. Befrat was specifically on the world down here, but really he was telling him that gan seder shtalshlus. That's interesting because his bris of kol seder shtalshlus, that he's going to not disrupt seder shtalshlus. She mebchinas yichud chitzeni da'avo. That comes from the level of yichud chitzeni of Abba and Imeh. This in Kabbalah says the Welt is created through the Yichud Chitzeni. So that is the Krishna's Bris was the Yichud Chitzeni Davot. It's a Yichud Chitzeni. It's still critical, but it's the Chitzeni's Hisardus. But Hisardus HaPnimi, what's the Pnimi's Dika connection? Hisardus with Neshamas Yisrael, Shem Pnimis Chitzeni Yisbarach. That's when the Eibishter connects and becomes one, unified with Neshamas Yisrael, because they're Pnimis Chitzeni Yisbarach. And here's the second one. V'zehu akrisis bris da Avram Avinu olav hashalom al kima teira mitzvus zeh yotefes mokim. This krisis bris is not on kima elam. This is al kim teira mitzvus that it should be tefes mokim, but the Eibishter where everything is beyond. He's beyond everything. That it should be tefes mokim. Akrisis bris in Meisha al hatshuva she'ered b'chinas primis v'atzmas ein sev baruch. The Rebbe Rashab Derech Agav is giving all the differences, and the krisis what's the difference between krisis bris of Avram. This is Bris of Mesha. Why do we say both? Because Avram is on close on Kim Teira Mitzvahs, and Mesha is on Tshuva.
Even when they're not being Mekayim Teira Mitzvahs.
Or even when they break the Teira Mitzvahs, Chaz v'Sholem, that it should be Me'eder, Pnimis Atzmus Ein Sei Baruch Hu, there should be hope for them. So you cover the whole thing. We have a Krisis Bris for the Welt, a Krisis Bris for Teira Mitzvahs, a Krisis Bris for Tshuva. Okay? And this memory, remembering, is even when they may become distant from one another. For example, like when we see when the Eibishter in Atzmus is completely removed and is so high and exalted from us, the Oz Harichu Godel Ma'ed. The distance is great. When you think about the Eibishter, how he is all the way in his Etzem, the distance is tremendous. Shahari Kolesh Tashus Einim Teifes Mokum Klal. Because Gan Seidish Tashus does not Teifes Mokum. It doesn't have any, it became Batrefnish. It doesn't have any value. Gam Madregas HaYeshu Gveis, even the highest levels of Ishtalshus don't come close. So it's a very distant place. Ubefrat Neshama Sheyordu Lamata, especially and specifically in the shamas that came down below, in the slabshu begufim, and manifested and dressed up in bodies. Shemisrachim heim ma'oid mebchinas reim musa atzmus. So in the shama, not just the shtalshu, the neshama especially comes all the way down to this world. The distance from this neshama beguf down here, the Eibishter is infinitely distant. Ubiyeshu bezman hagolus, and he has now more, even more. So all these ideas. First thing is B'chlal Seder Shtalshlus is distant, even the highest levels. It's B'frat Neshamas as they come down the bodies. That's even in the best times in the world. B'frat B'zman HaGolus B'riboy Halomas V'Estadim. Especially Golus is even more, because there's all the riboy, the many concealments and Halomas V'Estadim. V'hu Ima V'Nesechem Hoyim Avdilin. That's the meaning when we say Ima the Averis. Will mavdil, will separate us between Eibishter and us. This is a very, very far place that we have wandered away to. In truth is, even the Richuk of Golus is also only Chitzenius. Because even a Mechitza Shal Barzel, even a wall of an iron curtain. Barzel is usually not iron, right? Barzel is usually
iron.
Barzel is iron. I say brass. I know Nechesha sometimes is brass, sometimes copper.
Ashes is glass. Some type of glass.
Okay, good. Al Capone, bottom line is that an iron curtain.
Mateches is metal.
Right. Mateches metal, yeah. Even an iron curtain can't separate. So be'emes, even the difas golus is echt nicht. It's only a richuk b'chitzenius. V'hainu b'pnimius. But that all is b'pnimius. Das was mezakt as ein mechitza b'barzel Gam Chitzvah Ein Mafsekis is only B'Chitzenis. Is only B'Pnimius. But B'Chitzenis is Ayin Beis. Like B'Chitzenis, who I have Levarichuk. Ayin Beis is not an Ayin Beis, just for the record. But the B'Chitzenis, it's distant and far apart. That's why, so now it goes back to the Zikaron. And that's why in Rosh Hashanah we have the Pnimis Dike Zichrin. We remember the Pnimis Shemaskin Lefon of Kavyachol. That we remind him Kavyachol, reminding the Eibishter Kavyachol. You keep saying Kavyachol because it's not Muchlech yet. That they remind the Eibishter how you connected yourself to us, to Neshamas Yisrael B'chinis Pnimis Shalahem. The Mishum Zeh in the Gei Klal Harichuk V'Chitzeni. So in Rosh Hashanah we remind ourselves and remind the Eibishter that no matter what happened, no matter how far we are apart, you connected yourself b'pnimius with us. And because of that, there's not Negei B'Klal Harichuk Chitzeni. It's like a father and son, just because they're a million miles apart, the connection is there. No matter how far we've wandered. There's a Ksichon Habris V'Yisardus HaPnimi. And through remembering the Pnimizika connection between Neshamas Yisrael, the Eibishter, Neshamas Yisrael, Nasi Sardas HaChetzenis Gamken. We also create the unity on a Chetzenisdik level with the Welt. So everything is covered on Rosh Hashanah. Zayim Tchilas Masecha. You remember us, the Neshamas, and B'Meil Eibishter also remembers the world, and he renews the contract with the Welt. So he renews his contract with Neshamas Yisrael by us reminding, and then he renews the contract with the Welt, the whole environment that we need as well. That's pretty important, because if you only the first half, sein sehr gut geht der Rest mit Schul, stuck in Welt. That wouldn't be so geschmack, right? V'atam o mashet sichim zichron ala yisardus apnimi. And the reason you need Zikaron also on the Pnimizdika connection, Cheder is there. The Welt, you could say, doesn't really have a deep connection. It's a Chetzenizdika one. So there you need a remembering. Why do you need a reminding on the Sardus Pnimi? Because when the Eibishter is in that place where he's in this highest level, remember again, Mamutza, to reach all the way. You know, to have the Eibishter with you in when he's an external, in Besod is one thing. We want a connection how he is in his inner sanctum. But there, nothing is Tefes Mokim. Even the Shamas are not Tefes Mokim. However, Mokom Mokim, Ein Hashag was a Richuk Chaz V'Shalom. You can't call that a
Will you ever
Richuk.
see anywhere in all the Rebbe Sichos of my mom such a lesson?
Well, the Rebbe brings it. Yeah, the Rebbe does have.
Such a lesson?
Yeah. Because it's not the only place. It's not the only place.
No, I'm not saying, obviously it's not the only thing, but the Rebbe's derech, it seems like never...
I don't know. I wouldn't say that.
No?
What you're saying is a little dangerous. First of all, when you learn the Mamorim and learn the sources, they're very, very similar. The Chidushim of the Rebbe are not as big in these Inyanim as people think. You know, you mean Avos Yisrael, that the Rebbe wouldn't say it's not David. Look, the fact is, there's a whole Sikha of Vayikra, Chelik Zayin, where he talks mamish about this, and he says clearly, see, the Rebbe goes and uses it the other way around, explains something like this. Since the Eibishter is nothing is Tefes Mokim, and then he wants it, the connection is much deeper than by when someone is Tefes Mokim and he wants it. Because if there was Tefes Mokim by me and I want, in a way, Sof Kol Sof, I have no choice. When it's not Tefes Mokim, and then you want it, that's what the Rebbe says in Vayikra, then the connection is a bligvul, mamish, because the bottom line is it's a complicated sugya that's talked about. Could the Eibishter have chosen not Neshamas Yisrael? So in Teira Shalom he says, "Vos meint the Eibishter you can't kleib mi vanke?" That's what he says. The Rebbe
If he had a choice.
Yeah, and the Rebbe brings actually in Sichos that l'chere b'chira means he really could choose. So it's a complicated sugya. In Tanya he says one of achatas begufi, which is nidme b'chumriyu say right. It's not a part. It's not for here. It's a different sugya legamri. Okay, and Kaponim said they're not Tefes Mokim, but you can't say there's a cordon for Neshamas Yisrael is Mitzad Richuk Chaz V'Shalom. Mokom in Shem is Richuk Chaz V'Shalom because by Pnimius they never are apart. Rakshat Sichim is a cordon because you need a connection. Let's go back to a father and a son. A father and a son are always connected, even Basar V'Dam. Either could be a Richuk because either they years that they grew apart, or even if there's anger. But the connection is always there. It's what you need to remind, because I'm all, the Tatik and Zechab is not Tefer Smoken or Farkert. Mashenkim in the Welt, there's no Primisdike connection, it's a Chetzenic connection in the first place. And which is reawakened when Ubameba Shefer, the end of the Gemara says, Malchus Zechenes Shefers, Zechenes Kadeshi Yiskiru Lefnechem the Teva.
Imru lefanei malchiyos, kadesh tam lefanei alei.
Right. Imru lefanei Zechenes.
Kadesh yal zechenechem
L'teva.
l'teva.
Lefanei l'teva.
Ubameh.
Ubameh. What about Ubameh b'shefer? The third thing. Ubameh b'shefer.
How do you do all that?
How do you do it? B'b'chinas tzayke primis. Through the what's shefer? Shefer is the cry from the inner part of your soul and heart, like a flute. Trying to get your attention. It's like the inner part of the particular primis, the tshuva. Ukabol sil machal shemayim ba'azozes atzmis hanefesh shemezem agib b'chinas atzmis ein seif. So what does the shefer do? Is the cry from the depths of your heart in tshuva and kabol sil machal shemayim, accepting the kabol sil from the Meibishten, and as a ba'azozes atzmis, as a tresel, a movement. How do you touch azoza? A shakel, a shake. From the etzem, from inside, a shudder.
Who's impacted by something else. Impacted. Then you have the thing itself. And this
tresel from your pneumius reaches into atzmis and save. That's the commission is I'll say Peter Kuf Tzadik. Hey, and then he's explaining that's the chrenis, and you bring rayas from the Torah for all this. When we say that means exactly. He's saying everything here. What does the chrenis are? And you bring rayas from the Torah, like the rayas we said before. As a koran the ne'er, the ba'ava, zacharta isei, shuzem etzad ha'ava pnimis va'atzmis. But this is a koran of ne'er, it comes from the depths of the ava pnimis va'atzmis. Harayas shloi himen memenu meginim b'tzadikim. He's now saying that the Krisis Bris of Neich is coming. He's going to add Barvon this in a minute. The Krisis Bris of Neich is coming from the Av of Primis, and he's bringing a raya because you'll see from Neich didn't come any tzaddikim. Meginim with tzaddikim. What's a meginim? Meginim, protectors. What? I have to look this up. There's maybe a Maimar Chazal. Yeah, but it's not like Avram. It's not like a whole lineage. Okay, it does not from Bislam Ayin Zan, but Kitsi is saying that the Krisis Bris to Neach personally was an Ava Primis to Neach. Mitzad Neach Alein, not because he would bring tzaddikim or anything like this. The Shem Chom V'Yofis is his son, Shem. But Shem is in one, first of all, and also Shem's children loved Avka, till the Terach was also from him. So it's not he had a lineage, a very prestigious one. It's called Terach. Okay. Hagam the Krisis Bris Neich mit der Chesh gesagt, Krisis Bris Neich al Kima Elam nicht Ava Primis V'Chitzein Kanal. Yeshlema Shaz Zekorn hoye Kedem Krisis Bris.
The Krisis Bris.
The Krisis at first he remembered Anoyach and his family and the thing, and then he made a Krisis Bris. So the Krisis Bris Akim Elam, but the Zekorn is al dera the Zekorn in the Shamis Yisrael. Hagam the Krisis Bris al Kima Elam. One second. Okay, Ma'el v'yashlem d'mishum d'meneich lehimid meginim tzadikim umuvum v'akamachem pnei shoyekedim hamila le'nimshchon shamas gavoyes. So and the reason for this is because Neich did not have meginim tzadikim. It's probably a lashon chazal or something, because it's explained because he was kedim hamila. Neich was not circumcised, so mila heichen neshamas are usually coming from him. Ki lo hoye yichud zun b'pchimis primis. There was no Yichud Zun in the Primisdika level. With Sarachiyun, with Afma'ayin Zayim, and Mashakos Makmachal being a Malki Tzedek Melech Shalom.
Which is shame.
Right. Okay, so it's Sarachiyun. He has a Korn Hoy al Neich Mitzad Atzmei. So Neich Mitzad Atzmei, the Korn was Hainu Mitzad Etzem Ma'ilish Nesamis Yisrael. Yeah. But the Korn that came before it was really Mitzad Ma'ilish Nesamis Yisrael. V'yesh leimed dezel shebemedrash Rabbi Heir al Moshe Kosev. And here Shleimer is explaining. This is what the Medrash Rabbi's Meir makes ha'ara. It says Vayusker Elikim.
It's Noach.
Right. It says so. It brings him a pasuk Adam u'behemet tishia Hashem. V'ayim Moshe Kosev b'medrash Emer Reish Pasha Chav Zayin. V'yedu the Adam u'behemet zel shel amayla mitayda mitzvah shem b'chinas Adam. Adam u'behemet is higher than Teira mitzvahs. That's b'chinas Adam. Hu not tshuva. And that goes on tshuva.
Darge where Adam and Behema are Shaga.
Right. That's the level of tshuva. Kamam Razal Arumim bedas. When you say Arumim bedas, that they're like naked, the helmets can das. Ka'adam, Arum bedas ka'adam, umesimim atzman kebehema. Okay. So in other words, there's both the behema and the adam in them. Arumim
here probably would mean Milashon Orma, not Milashon Orma, Milashon cleverness.
Right. Yeah. Arumim bedas ka'adam, umesim atzman, but they machen sich as if you're behema.
Adam u'behema tishia Hashem.
Yeah, okay, this is all about Ramuzgar to explain what the union of the Krisis Bris, the Zakaran of remembering Noach.
What I think he's saying is, why on the Medrash that it says Vayisker Elikim es Noach? Does the Medrash bring the pasuk Adam u'behema tishia Hashem? He's saying that the Rebbe Rashab is explaining. If he's Vayisker Elikim es Noach, is because he's remembering the Shamas Yisrael. So why is he making a Krisis Bris for Gans, all nations of the world, for all humanity? So he's saying Adam u'behema tishia Hashem. He's remembering it. So Adam u'behema tishia. He's remembering the Adam of the Yidden, and so he's remembering Noach. So mainly he's being Mashiach Adam u'behema, because it's on a level that's higher than Adam u'behema.
That was
Noach.
Yeah, that was the whole Maimar Ramuzgar that began 10 lines earlier. But this was Noach. Now he goes to Ozkan ala Ovis, remembering the Ovis, the Rak, Bavisach Cheshek Hashem, Cheshek Hashem, Shari B'chol Pam Sheizker Meishe, Chol Pam Sheizker Meishe, Schus Ovis Hoye, Ba'azman Hoye Shaleke de Boy. Is there missing a word here? Shari B'chol Pam Sheizker Meishe, every time he mentions Meishe.
No, every time Moshe mentions Schus Ovis.
Okay, so Pam Sheizker Meishe, Schus Ovis Hoye, Ba'azman Shaleke. Ah.
If you look in Chumash, I guess, every time that he's mentioning
every time he mentions is a time when the Eden were not Kedeboy. Kamashakos Zochela V'Dechela Avram. V'Zakon Yitzis Mitzrayim Shehoye Rak Mitzad Atzmi Mitzad Rotzna Atzmi Ben Neshama Yisrael.
You had the Zakaron of Noach.
Yeah.
You had the Zakaron of the Ovis,
which refers to like whenever Shalei Kedeboy. Now V'Zakon Yitzis Mitzrayim.
Yeah. Musaf, you have.
Yeah. He's going through all the psukim. So the current Yitzis Mitzrayim, on the other hand, is Dafke Mitzad Rotzna Atzmi, the Neshamis Yisrael. He's going back to that Nakuda. And through that Memela will be also the Zakaron for the Gans Yistalshus. All this was a whole arichis to explain, just like a father and a son. There's no reason for this Rotzna. The same as this Lamaila. It's stuck in Sa'ava Atzmis. The same as Fakert. As David Eberster will uns mit Harotzen Atzmi, zegt an Shamas Yisrael, ham Harotzen Atzmi, to be connected to the Kus. Shehu b'iskashus Atzmi b'lishum siba v'tam klal. This too is a iskashus Atzmi, an essential connection that has no reason or cause. U'kamoy b'mesis never b'peil mamash al kiddush Hashem, shem b'zeh shum hergish ene klal. Like you see b'peil, when Eden were meis nefesh al kiddush Hashem, there was no pleasure in it exactly. Because if it was based on Enig, it wouldn't have been possible to give away your life. Seichel doesn't tell you go Mesiris Nefesh and give away your life. Because Seichel git nicht kenort. There's no room in Seichel that a person should just kill themselves, allow themselves to be killed. Same thing, Tainuk. Tainuk get nicht kenot. If it's mitzad pleasure, No Jew went to the died on Kiddush Hashem because he had pleasure in it.
I think he just described the psychology of a suicide bomber.
Correct, because they do have pleasure.
They create within them a pleasure of Mesiras Nefesh. A self when it comes down to it, the Seichel is not going to allow it. So they drug him up a little bit to put the Seichel aside. Like the Tainug with what they're going to get.
I'm just moving fast because I have to go to the oil in a few minutes, so that's why. Rak mitzad harotzna atzmi. This, however, Narvoden, it's not mitzad tainug, it's mitzad harotzna atzmi. The hainu etzem haiskashus and the shoma belukus. She'i efshel leklal liyis nifrit chaz v'shalom. It's that id vil and ishta ken zayin ogeris and fnelukus, basically. So the connection of Eden to the Eibush is not mitzad einig, it's not mitzad seichel, it's harotzna atzmi. A vil zayin verbunden, kenish zayin cannot be disconnected chaz v'shalom. And for therefore he will be Meisa Nafesh B'Peil Mamish, shall die for it. V'lo yichbed alav the Kabul Kol Yisurim Rachmana Litzlan. It won't be difficult for him to Mekabel all Yisurim Rachmana Litzlan. Why Rak Mitzad Etzem Iskashrusei? Because this kashrus is deeper than any tzara, any pain, any difficulty, any pleasure, any hepecha pleasure. To call Zehu Rotzen B'lei Tainug. All this is a rotzen b'lei tiny. He says to look in the surface. Ayin Beis. This is all rotzen on pleasure, not pleasure. Like the mitzvahs that are called chukim. The b'derech klal harei mitzvahs en b'chinas rotzen shalamayla ma'atam. Why they call it? B'chlal mitzvahs are rotzen shalamayla ma'atam. There's no reason for them. There ain't tam l'rotzen. There's no reason for rotzen.
All mitzvahs are rotzen Hashem, which is a minimum time. So why do you have specially chukim?
You're asking, or you're?
I think that's what he's bavoning. Or maybe
No. All mitzvahs are begedis, because it says many places that even the mitzvah shpatim and edis are also really like chukim. L'chein mitzvahs lav lenis nitnu. That's what the Gemara says. That's why it says mitzvahs are not given to have pleasure hanoah from them, because a mitzvah be'etzem is higher than hanoah. It's the rotzen atzmin. B'frat ha-mitzvah shem b'chinas chukim. Yeah, he's basically saying all the mitzvahs have this element in it, especially the mitzvahs that specifically like parah aduma. And all this because the rotzen is atzmi, is essential, an essence, and tainug is not a sibah for all this. So all this is coming to explain this whole inyan with the rotzen, because going back to the tainug within the rotzen. Okay, so ganze sugya to going back to explain what rotzen and tainug are. Okay, das ist schön mit dem Code von aller Seiten. We darf noch bestimmte verbringen an anderen Tag. My family, they're all waiting. Leah, how should it go?
Up and down.
We said the Chasagit is weit, so high, we need a Zakaran to bring it back down.
Up and down.
Let's put it in here, right? Stop broadcast first.
Stop broadcast or record?
Stop record first or stop broadcast first?